In video 4, we're going to look at two main types of problems. The first type of problem is going to be consecutive integer word problems, and the second is going to deal with some geometry problems. So let's go ahead and look at example 8. We are told that the sum of two consecutive integers is 91, and we want to know what are the two integers. So a couple of vocabulary things we need to break down first is what consecutive means. Consecutive means they happen in a row. So for example, 4 and 5 are consecutive numbers. 11 and 12 are consecutive numbers. They're numbers that follow each other in sequence. And then when we talk about integers, we're looking for numbers that are basically your whole numbers, either positive or negative. We don't want any fractions or decimals. We just want numbers that are like 5 or -5 or 7, that kind of thing. So we need to find two of those types of numbers that add up to give me 91. Now, of course, I could use guessing and checking, and it would probably take me a while, but I could power through and figure out what that is. We're going to go through a mathematical way to do that, however. So when I think about consecutive integers, let's go back to the example I gave earlier of 4 and 5. If we think of mathematically how we get from one number to the next, what we're really doing is saying 4 plus 1 would give me 5. So I'm going to use that same process. Now, we don't know what either of these integers are, so I'm going to just label them with variables. So my first number, I'm going to leave as n because it's a number we don't know. Now, I don't know my second number either, but I do know it has to be consecutive to the first. So that means there needs to be a +1 difference in between my first and my second, just like there's one difference between consecutive numbers 4 and 5. So the way I'm going to rewrite the second number is going to be n plus 1. And now I know about these two numbers that they have a sum of 91. And of course we find sums by doing addition. So I'm going to take the first number and I'm going to add it to the way I wrote the second number, n plus 1. And I know my sum had to be 91 from the problem they gave me. So all I'm going to do now is to combine like terms. 2n plus 1 equals 91. And I'm just going to solve this problem for n. So I need to undo my addition first. So I'm going to subtract 1 from each side. And that's going to give me 2n is equal to 90. The next thing I need to do is to divide both sides by 2. And I get n equals 45. Now, it did ask us for the two integers, and we only got one number as our solution. So we used n to represent our first number. So I'm going to write that right here. To find our second number, we're just going to do 45 plus 1, which would give me 46. So that shows me that my two numbers are going to be 45 and 46. There we have it. Alright, so they're going to throw another wrinkle in at us on example 9. This time we want to find two consecutive even integers. So these are going to be two even integers that are going to go back to back. We're going to skip one number in between. So again, I'm just going to start with some concrete examples to help us figure out what's going on. Again, we're going to need a first number and a second number. But if I think about two even numbers, I'm just going to pull two even numbers off the top of my head, 8 and 10. Mathematically, when we are jumping from 8 to 10, we need to think about what we're actually doing. To get from 8 to 10, we're adding 2. So again, I'm going to let my first number be represented by the term n. And I'm going to rewrite my second term in terms of that. So just like to get from 8 to 10, we had to add 2. To get from n to the next consecutive even number, we're going to also add 2. So we're going to have our first number be n, and our second number be n plus 2. And then we're going to set this up very similar to how we set up the last one. We know that we are finding a sum, so we're going to add these together, and we know that that sum has to be 258. So when I combine these, that's going to give me 2n plus 2 is equal to 258. I need to go ahead and undo the subtraction before I undo the multiplication. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And I get 2n is equal to 256. Alright, so then I have to do some division. I need to divide both sides by 2. So n is going to give me, let's see, that will be it goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 5 twice. We carry the 1, 2 goes into 16 8 times. So our first number is going to be 128. And I'm going to write that by our first term over here. And then to find the next term, it would be 128. Instead of plus 1 this time, it would be plus 2. And 128 plus 2 is going to be 130. So let's just double check that those did add up and that I did my division right. So if I add those together, that's going to give me 8, 5, and 2, which is the sum we wanted. So our two consecutive even numbers are 128 and 130. Alright, so that wraps up the consecutive integer problems. Let's go ahead and look at a geometry problem. So let's take a look at example 10. This time we're told we have a rectangle that is 12 meters longer than it is wide. We are told its perimeter is 68 meters, and we want to find its length and width. So just like any geometry problem, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and draw a picture to help us illustrate this. So a rectangle is 12 meters longer than it is wide. So we're looking for length and width, and I don't know either one. Looking at this though, it does tell me that the length is based on the width. So for my width, I'm going to label that as x. Now when I think about my length, it says that the length is 12 meters longer than it is wide. So since it's longer, that means we're going to have to do addition. So we're going to do x plus 12. So when I label this on my picture over here, I'm going to have x. I'm going to have x plus 12. Now we are looking for perimeter, and our perimeter was 68. So when I think about perimeter, that means I'm going to have to add up all four sides together. So just like we've talked about several times this year, our opposite sides of rectangles are congruent. So that means that this is going to have to be x plus 12, and that this is going to have to be x. So I'm going to add all four of those sides together and combine like terms. That's going to give me 4 x's total because I have an x, an x, an x, and an x. And I'm going to add my constants together. I had a pair of 12s, which is going to give me plus 24. And going back to my problem, I know that the perimeter is going to have to be 68 because it told it to me. Oh, that was a very sloppy 8. There we go. It tells me right here that our perimeter was 68. So I'm going to come down here just to give us a little bit more room where I'm not going to be writing underneath the little camera here. And I just need to solve this equation. So again, we undo subtraction and addition before we undo multiplication. So we're going to subtract 24 from both sides. We're going to get 4x is equal to, let's see, 8 minus 4 is 4. 6 minus 2 is 4. So we end up with 4x equals 44. We're going to divide both sides by 4, and we get x equals 11. So x we used as our width. So I'm going to go ahead and label that as our width. And then to find the length, all I have to do is add that 12 to it. So that's going to give me 23. So for my final answer, my width will be 11, and my length will be 23. Make sure that you understand which is which of the two numbers you get, because on a multiple choice question, you might be asked for only the length or only the width. Or we might be tricky and give you both numbers, just one for the length and one for the width, and switch them back and forth. So just make sure that you understand what your numbers in each problem represent. Alright, so that wraps up this lesson. There are a couple U-tries for you to try below. Check your answers, and then go ahead and start working on the practice. Alright, we'll see you in the next lesson.